Judges 14. Samson went down to Timnath, and in Timnath he saw a woman of the daughters of the Philistines. He went up and told his father and mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now take her for me as a wife. His father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brothers and in all my people, that you go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, Take her for me, for she is fitting in my eyes. His father and mother did not know that it was from Hashem, for he was seeking a pretext against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines were ruling in Israel. So Samson and his father and mother descended to Timnath. They reached the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion was roaring toward him. The spirit of Hashem came over him, and he tore it apart as one tears apart a kid, though he had nothing in his hand. He did not tell his father and mother what he had done. He went down and spoke with the woman, and she was fitting in the eyes of Samson. He returned after some time to marry her, but he turned aside to see the fallen carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees was in the body of the lion with honey. He scraped it into his hands and went, walking and eating. He went to his father and mother and gave them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped it from the body of the lion. His father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there, for that was what the young men would do. It happened when the woman and her father saw him that they took 30 companions to be with him. Samson said to them, Let me now pose you a riddle. If you tell me its solution during the 7 days of feasting, and you solve it, I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot tell it to me, then you will give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of clothing. They said to him, Pose your riddle and let us hear it. He said to them, From the eater came forth food, and from the strong came forth sweetness. They could not tell the solution of the riddle for 3 days. It was on the Sabbath day that they said to Samson's wife, Entice your husband to tell you the riddle for us, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Did you invite us here to impoverish us? So Samson's wife wept near him and said, You only hate me, and you do not love me. You pose the riddle to the sons of my people, but you did not tell me the solution. He said to her, Behold, I did not even tell my father and mother. Shall I tell you? She wept near him for the remainder of the 7 days that they had the feast. It happened on the 7th day that he told her, for she had distressed him. Then she told the solution to the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to Samson on the 7th day before the sun had set, What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? He replied to them, Had you not plowed with my calf, you would not have solved my riddle. Then a spirit of Hashem came over him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of them. He took their garments and gave the changes of clothing to those who had told the solution of his riddle. His wrath flared, and he went up to his father's house. Meanwhile, Samson's wife was given in marriage to his companion, whom he had befriended. Judges 15. It happened sometime later, in the days of the wheat harvest, that Samson remembered his wife with a goat kid. He said, I wish to come to my wife, to the chamber. But her father would not permit him to enter. Her father said, I thought that you surely hate her, so I gave her over to your companion. Behold, her younger sister is better than she. Let her be yours, instead of her. Samson said to them, This time I will be blameless from the Philistines, when I do evil to them. Samson went and caught 300 foxes. He took torches and turned the foxes tail to tail, and put one torch between each pair of tails, in the middle. He set fire to the torches, and sent the foxes off to the grain fields of the Philistines. Thus he burnt down everything from grain stacks to standing grain to olive groves. The Philistines said, Who did this? And others answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he took his wife and gave her to his companion. The Philistines then went and burned her and her father in fire. Samson said to them, If only you had done so before. Now I will avenge myself against you, and afterwards I will stop. Then he struck them calf upon thigh, a great blow. Then he descended and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Edom. The Philistines went up for war, and they encamped in Judah, spreading out at Lehi, Jawbone. The men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" They responded, "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he did to us." 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom, and they said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this that you have done to us?" But he answered them, "As they did to me, so I did to them." They said to him, "We have come to arrest you, to hand you over into the hand of the Philistines." Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you yourselves will not harm me." They said to him, "No, rather we will only arrest you and give you over into their hand, but we will surely not put you to death." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. He came to Lehi, and the Philistines shouted at him. A spirit of Hashem came over him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that had been singed with fire. His bonds melted from upon his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey and stretched out his hand and took it. He struck down 1,000 people with it. Samson then said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heap upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he cast the jawbone from his hand. That place was called Ramath Lehi, Jawbone Hill. He became very thirsty. He called out to Hashem and said, "You have granted great salvation to the hand of your servant. And now, shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised?" So God split open the hollow that was in the jawbone, and water came from it, and he drank. His spirit returned to him, and he was revived. Therefore, that place is called En Hakorei, spring of the caller, which is in Lehi until this day. Samson judged Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. Judges 16. Samson went to Gaza. He saw there a harlot and consorted with her. It was said to the Gazites, "Samson has come here." So they went around and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They remained silent all night, thinking, "By the dawn light, we will kill him." Samson slept until midnight. He arose at midnight and grasped the doors of the city gate and the 2 doorposts and tore them out with the crossbar and placed them on his shoulders. He brought them to the top of the mountain that faces Hebron. It happened after this that he loved a woman from the Sorek brook. Her name was Delilah. The governors of the Philistines went up to her and said to her, "Entice him and find out by what means his strength is so great, and by what means we may overpower him, so that we may bind him, to afflict him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Please, tell me what makes your strength so great, and how you could be bound to afflict you." Samson told her, "If they bind me with 7 wet twines that have never been dried, I would become weak and be like any other man." The governors of the Philistines then brought her 7 wet twines that had never been dried, and she bound him with them. And there was an ambush party with her in the room. She said to him, "Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he snapped the twines as flax straw snaps when it smells fire, and his full strength was not even apparent. Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me how you can be bound." He said to her, "If they bind me up with new ropes with which work was never done, then I would become weak and be like any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, "Philistines are upon you, Samson." And the ambush party was sitting in the room. Samson snapped them off his arms like a thread. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Up to now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you can be bound." He told her, "If you weave 7 locks of my head into a weaving rod." She fastened it with the peg of the loom. She said to him, "Philistines are upon you, Samson." He awoke from his sleep and tore out the peg of the loom and the weaving rod. She said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? This makes 3 times that you have mocked me and not told me what makes your strength so great." It happened that after she tormented him with her words every day and pressed him, he became exasperated to death. So he told her all that was in his heart and said to her, "A razor has never gone upon my head, for I am a Nazirite unto God from my mother's womb. If I would be shaven, my strength would leave me, and I would become weak and be like any other man." Delilah saw that he had told her all that was in his heart. So she sent and summoned all the governors of the Philistines, saying, "Come up this time, for he has told me all that was in his heart." So the governors of the Philistines came up and brought up the money in their hands. She lulled him to sleep on her knees, and she called over the man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head, thus beginning to afflict him, and his strength departed from him. She said, "Philistines are upon you, Samson." He awoke from his sleep and said to himself, "I will go out to fight like every other time and arouse myself." But he did not know that Hashem had departed from him. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him in copper fetters. He was made to grind grain in prison. The hair of his head began to sprout after he had been shaven. The governors of the Philistines gathered to make a great sacrifice unto their god Dagon, and for a celebration. They said, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand." The people saw him and praised their God, for they said, "Our God has delivered into our hand our enemy and the destroyer of our land, the one who increased the numbers of our slain." It happened when their heart became merry that they said, "Summon Samson and let him entertain us." They summoned Samson from the prison, and he sported before them. They stood him between the pillars. Samson said to the boy who was holding his hand, "Let go of me, and let me touch the pillars that the building rests upon, so that I may lean on them." Now the building was full of men and women, and all the governors of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson's sport. Samson called out to Hashem and said, "My Lord, Hashem Elohim, remember me and strengthen me just this one time, O God, and I will exact vengeance from the Philistines for one of my 2 eyes." Samson grasped the 2 central pillars upon which the building rested, and he leaned on them, one with his right hand and one with his left hand. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." He leaned with force, and the building collapsed on the governors and all the people inside it. The dead whom he killed at his own death were more than he had killed in his lifetime. His brothers and all his father's household came down and carried him away. They brought him up and buried him between Sariah and Eshtaol, in the burial plot of Manoah, his father. He had judged Israel for 20 years. Okay, that was Judges 14 through 16, and this is the NQE, episode 119. So in continuation of the dialogue of the character of the judges that God's using, Samson absolutely qualifies as one who is going to keep it unpredictable. Being of extraordinary strength and courage, he's probably very fit, probably very good looking, and he has not ever cut his hair, so he has magnificently beautiful long hair. I am certain that he is drawing the attention of all the beautiful mamacitas that live in that area, and he is not denying himself at all. However, every time he gets a little taste of Philistine women, he has to follow it up with killing all these Philistine men. It's kind of a crazy thing. This is Samson's life. Enjoy the women. Kill the men. God has sanctioned, literally, a bull in a china closet. It's terrific. So this special life of his begins with his first wife. Who knows why she agrees to marry this guy, but the father is sending all the wrong signals. He shows up, he sees Samson, he goes away, he picks up 30 friends of his, comes back. And then he says, "Hey, Samson, what is he trying to show here?" Samson absolutely taunts these guys with this impossible riddle based on this impossible experience with this lion and the honey. It's crazy. Nobody is ever going to get that. But doesn't Samson know a happy wife is a happy life? Why does he want to antagonize these people if not to later on destroy them? I mean, I suppose they could have said no thank you to Samson when he offered the riddle, but since when do 31 men back down from one guy that they're not supposed to be afraid of? But as we have seen before in this world, all power is checked. And Samson, he has a kryptonite. And it happens to be beautiful women who nag incessantly. So are we laughing at this irony? So more destruction ensues with this wife. For some crazy reason, the dad says, "I'm going to give this daughter to another man." The dad offers the younger daughter. It's crazy. because I don't believe Samson has presented himself as the kind of a person who should be provoked. This miscalculation ends up costing the dad his life and the daughter's life because the Philistines, they kill him once they realize that it's Samson who's destroying their entire town and all their fields and everything. So Samson acknowledges that by killing the wife and the father, they've done the right thing and he's going to relent. But he has to give to them one more massive blow. And this particular blow comes in the amount equal to calf upon thigh, which apparently is a tremendously enormous and massive amount. Because now the Philistine army has mobilized against Judah and sort of forces Judah's hand. These brothers, they go to Samson. They say, Samson, man, we got to arrest you. And as long as they themselves don't torment Samson, Samson goes along and he lets them tie up his hands with these, special ropes or whatever. Well, he goes to the Philistines and then almost instantly as they begin mocking him, Samson introduces himself to them. He is the bull. They are the china closet. He goes bananas and he uses a jawbone of a donkey. They call that area Lehi in reference to the fact that it was the jawbone of a donkey. I mean, you would think that maybe Samson should grab one of the swords that these guards are using. But that would make it too predictable. This is like the Gideon story. God's like, no, Samson, use this jawbone. That's crazy enough. And later, of course, when you're thirsty, you can drink water from it. But what's interesting about this particular water is that it brings spiritual and physical revival. Spring of the Collar is the name of this place, and it's located on Jawbone Hill. I mean, can you get enough of that? So more beautiful ladies come and please Samson, and more destruction ensues. I mean, the part about Samson ripping the door off of the gate, that's just sort of funny. But he meets his match in Delilah. Clearly, this woman is giving to Samson what his body cannot handle. And his brains turned into mush and leak out of his ears or something because she's literally saying to him, Samson, I want to kill you. I want to hurt you. You got to tell me these things. And he does. Of course, he toys with her a little bit at first, but the kryptonite comes in full force because this woman is crying and nagging and begging. And he says, okay, my darling, this is how you're supposed to kill me. But it's not really a surprise. He is a bull. They are a china closet. And the way you get a bull to go into a china closet is by either putting a ring in its nose and pulling it in, or by putting something the bull wants in the closet. And these women, they are the grease that makes this wheel turn. And boy, they must regret having arrested him. They put this bull into their china closet and he goes crazy. Blinded, humiliated, betrayed. This sacrifice of Samson is his final opus, and it is the greatest killing session of Philistines of his entire life. How poetic is that? That is it for this episode of the NQE. Thank you for watching. We're almost done. The NQE is out.